All right, we're going to go ahead and get our class started here. If we could have everybody come more this way, I'd rather have everybody come down this way so that as we talk and ask questions, I want the interaction to be something that you guys are hearing each other. So, come on down. The price is right. So just a reminder, our class today is continuing on in this topic that I'm calling Navigating LGBT+. How in the world do we care for a world that is kind of mixed up? I guess that's what I can say. How do we care? How do we really do this, especially when it hits close to home? And for some of you guys here, you have loved ones, you've got friends, you've got children, you've got maybe a parent, you've got somebody in a situation where there is this question of LGBT. And so last week we told a story, and I just shared with you the story that we had gone through as our family with my daughter. And I didn't want it to come across like, oh, sympathize with us, whatever else. And nor do I want to come across as our story is the be-all, end-all. Not at all. It's just our story. Some of you here have even crazier stories than we have. We could probably spend weeks and months just sharing stories and going through this. But what I want to make sure we do is we don't just share stories, which is cool anyway, but I want to also make sure that we take the time to say, okay, what does God's Word say about some of these things? So what I want to do is I'm going to give you some handouts today, and so I got papers for you, which is great. And I'll make sure I give the papers. I know some of you have to leave a little bit early. Yes. Not yet, but when I pass the papers out, I for sure will ask you, definitely, because I will need the help with that. So I want you to turn in your Bibles to John chapter 1. John chapter 1, verse 14. John 1, verse 14. John 1, verse 14. The Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of what? Grace and truth. Full of grace and truth. Notice it's not just full of grace. Notice it's not just full of truth. It is a combination of grace and truth. In fact, I have my wristband on today, my little Frontline. How many of you still wear yours? Yeah. So what do we have on the wristband? What does it say? Frontline Bible Church? Well, it doesn't say Frontline. It's just our cool logo. But it says grace, and then in all caps, and truth. It's not one or the other. It is grace and truth. And this was definitely put to the test when we were going through everything with my daughter. Because there were days when she was looking for a fight. She wanted to fight us something bad. She was trying to get our goat. And on those days, I wanted to give her so much truth. And then there were other times where there was a sense of brokenness, and it was very, very easy to give her grace because I knew she needed it right then. But how do you know whether to give grace or whether to give truth? How do you know that? And so now, Kathleen, I'm going to ask you to come up here and help me pass out some papers. The first thing I'm going to do is give you a... all right, I'll keep this one for myself. While Kathleen is passing those out, I'm going to share with you guys, these papers that we're getting here are out of this book, okay? Well, technically it's this book. This is called Guiding Families of LGBT+ Loved Ones. This is put together by an organization called Posture Shift. Posture Shift. And the idea is that you're not to sift or position. We as Christians can take a position on the issue. But our posture, as we present our position, will make a big difference in how we interact. And so I can take a posture of defensiveness, I can take a posture of offensiveness, or I can take a posture of openness. Once again, I don't have to shift my position, but maybe I need to shift my posture as I do it. So this is the book, Guiding Families of LGBT plus Loved Ones. It says, for every pastor and parent and all who care. Absolutely. So this is the book.
Amy wants to be here, but she can't. So, thank you.
Okay. So we have...
That was awesome.
Thank you. So it's Guiding Families. This is the expanded edition right here, and then they have another one called the Essentials Edition. And this is just some of the document and stuff that it's just printed out. But I want to go through, and I want to talk about this, how teens come out. Well, first of all, on this back side here, I want you to see this, the dark side, okay? I want you to look on the dark side because I want you to get a sense for the journey and the process of what young people go through. And think about this in relationship to John chapter 1, verse 14, that Jesus came full of grace and truth, okay? Full of grace and truth. In fact, it goes on there in John chapter 1, verse 16. From the fullness of his grace, we have all received one blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. So as we think about presenting the gospel, as we think about living out the gospel, our desire is that we give them Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ embodies grace and truth. When we went through the series, this was a while back, and one of the things that we talked about with this grace and truth is when Jesus was here, you can probably think of examples where Jesus showed grace. You remember the woman at the well? When she came out, she had all those husbands, and Jesus says to her, basically, welcome. Welcome. It doesn't matter how many husbands you've had, welcome. Okay? You remember the woman that was caught in adultery? What did Jesus say to the woman? What's that? Yeah, who's accusing you? I said, hey, whoever's without sin, let him cast the first stone. You see anybody? I'm the only one that could throw the stone at you. And what do I say? Go and sin no more. You're forgiven. Go and sin no more. We certainly see Jesus showing grace, correct? Is there a culture within this LGBT issue, whether it's friends or family, is there a place for us to demonstrate the grace of Jesus Christ? Absolutely. Because for many of them, they equate Christianity with, I hate you. That's what they equate. Is there a place for grace? Absolutely. Is there a place for truth? Can you think of a time where Jesus gave a dose of truth instead of grace? What's that? To the Pharisees. To Nicodemus. Even with the woman that was caught in adultery. Some have said, I wonder what Jesus was writing. Some have said he was probably writing out the sins of the Pharisees, reminding them, this is what you were doing. Which is why they were like, yeah, I guess I probably shouldn't grab a rock right now. It was interesting, because this is what came out as we studied this whole section. To those who were expecting grace, which would be the Pharisees, to those who were expecting grace, what did Jesus give them? He gave them truth. To those who were expecting truth, what does he give them? Grace. Jesus melded this whole thing of grace and truth together by not giving people what they thought they were going to get. And I think for us, as we live in this world, how can we be more gracious in our truth telling, I guess, is really what we're saying. Because is the lifestyle of LGBT plus going to meet the greatest needs of an individual? Not a chance. But the way in which we offer them the hope of the gospel, the true life-changing gospel that will make all the difference on whether or not they receive it or not, oftentimes. And so I want to go through this, and I want to just go through this because maybe you guys can relate to this. Maybe you can relate as we walk through this. So in this particular one, look at stage 1. They feel different at an early age. Now, some of the ways in which somebody may feel different, going through it, there is a big situation, a big push now when it comes to transgender. And so the question is, when are people feeling themselves becoming transgender? I remember when my daughter was going through it, all of a sudden she was just like, you know what, I feel like a man. And so she wanted us to call her Mal. She started dressing in very manly things. Yes, I have another handout. Oh, Kathleen, do you have the handouts, or did you give them back to me? There was none left. Okay. Here. Yeah, okay, there we go. At least you can look at that. I can get you another one if you want it, Kathleen. Did everybody get one who wanted one? I just realized. I hope. Oh, that was an empty one? Okay. No, that's fine. We got it. I just want to make sure everybody got one who was in here. So in this particular situation, maybe they feel different at an early age. Whether it's, like I said, with my daughter, she says, oh, I was a man. Well, we find out later on she really wasn't. In fact, we had watched it. We had watched her. She was girly girl for quite a while, and then all of a sudden this switch happens. But for some, as they've seen, they don't feel like a girl. They feel like a guy. They feel like a guy trapped in a girl's body, or vice versa. There's stories that are out there of all these individuals, but maybe in one case, they feel different at an early age. Number 2, difficult peer integration, especially same gender. Boy, the stories are there. The boy who all of his friends are throwing the ball, and this boy can't throw a ball to save his life. The other kids, they want to talk about sports, or they want to go ride bikes, and they want to do dangerous things, and this is the boy who would rather just sit home and color. And he feels different, especially among his peers. Or maybe the girl, the girls are playing Barbies, and what does this girl want to do? She would rather be playing tackle football with the boys outside. They feel different. Number 3, higher victimization, teasing, bullying, self-explanatory. Number 4, fearing family rejection. Looking around thinking, boy, if I say anything about this, I look at my family. This is especially true of Christian families. Especially true. We talk about Christ, and I think that was certainly the case in our family. We loved God. We talk about Him at home. We go to church all the time. And so if there's an unspoken rule in the house, that is, we're Christians around here, therefore you can't talk about ways that you may feel different, they just close it off, fear and family rejection. Number 5, anticipate judgment at church. Now, there are some churches where it's cool to be gay. I don't think Frontline would advertise themselves as such. Some put the rainbow flags out front or whatever else. I think everybody here, well, maybe most everybody here would realize that's probably not the right way of going about it. But on the flip side, do we put ourselves out there as the church who hates gays? If you're LGBT, you better stay away from here because we're about the Bible at this church. And, so they anticipate judgment. Number 6, higher isolation, depression, post-trauma stress. I think there's a direct correlation statistically between Gen Z and the amount of higher anxiety, and yet the amount of individuals within Generation Z who identify as some letter of LGBT plus is going up all the time. I've heard it as high as 1 in 3. 1 in 3 Gen Z identify as some letter of LGBT plus. 1 in 3. Interestingly, Gen Z the nickname is the anxiety generation. Is it possible that there's a correlation between these two things going together? Number 7, wonder if God has disowned them. We're going to talk about this, but oftentimes there is a feeling of, man, if I fear my parents are going to reject me, if I fear my church is going to reject me, if I feel that all these things, bad things are going to happen to me, Lord, please take this away. God, I pray that you take it away. And the expression is, I'm going to pray the gay away. I'm going to pray it away, but yet God doesn't seem to be answering that prayer. I still am attracted to the opposite sex. I still, whatever the situation. Well, clearly God doesn't even care about me. He hates me, I'm sure, at this point in time. Wonder if God has disowned them. Number 8, tend to repress to a point of exhaustion. The word repression there at the bottom. Repression is the mental and emotional energy expended in an attempt to subdue or shut down unwanted feelings through self-effort. This process commonly leads to mental exhaustion or even a psychological breakdown. This can lower hope, increase feelings of self-contempt, and increase suicidality. So you're taking this and I'm pushing it down. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Maybe you've heard that expression, stop thinking about pink elephants. I guarantee none of you were thinking about pink elephants until I said, don't think about it. Now what are you thinking about? I wonder what pink elephants would be like. The more you tell yourself to stop thinking about something, which truly is law-based living, by the way, the more you tell yourself to stop thinking about something, what are you going to do? You think about it. So repression, unfortunately, has the exact opposite. I try to push it down until it feels so big that now we come to the place there where it says confidence. The confidence is, I am sick of repressing. I'm sick of saying this is who I am, whatever it is. And now I don't care anymore. I'm sick of fighting. I am gay. Number 9, may have attempted or considered suicide. And then finally, number 10, come out. This was my daughter's story. I remember going to her and saying, Mal, why didn't you come and talk to us earlier? Why is it that the very first time we heard about this is when you come to us in the hallway and say, yeah, I'm gay? What in reality had been happening was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and now we get to 10. So for those of us who are here who may have loved ones who go through this, and maybe it's not our story where we felt these feelings, we just see the person at number 10. And we go, what's all this stuff going on? Why did they do this? And we just think it just happened that day. Like, oh, I now am gay today. Instead, no, it's been all of this journey. And so the reason why I wanted you to see this paper is because I hope it gives you more of a sense of what it looks like when somebody actually comes out and finally says, I am gay. There's a whole journey that's taken place. And when you see that, you can understand and hopefully show a little more grace. Because when you see the process and the struggle and all those things. And once again, this is not everybody's story. But this story is common enough that this organization that is led by those who have struggled with this very same thing. This was all put together by an organization just like that who understands. It's like divorcees writing to divorcees. They get it. And that's what this organization is all about. And so I wanted you to see this, that this process it's in fact, as you read it, you go, man, my heart goes out. My heart really goes out. And rather than coming out and, hey, I'm gay, well, guess what? Come and get it. Boom, as I start beating them with the Bible. Instead, does it give me a greater sense of maybe what's going on? If you turn over the page there, this is maybe a little more detail and depth about what is being talked about. Repress. I discover same-gender attraction or gender dysphoria. By the way, dysphoria is a technical term. It's really what transgenderism is. There's a gender dysphoria. It's a separation. Even though physically I am this, I don't feel like this. So the question is, which is right, your feelings or what's true? That gender dysphoria was the term that was given to transgenderism, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was the term that was given to transgenderism before transgenderism became in vogue. So gender dysphoria is this disconnect that I have between what I am and what I feel, okay? Discovering same-gender attraction or gender dysphoria can be a shock to youth. For many, this reality may not match their family's biblical beliefs. They want to be a, quote, good Christian or meet their parents' expectations, so they try to deny their experience or pray the gay away. If they have not experienced spiritual surrender, or if they are under high parent expectations, a young person may fall into repression using their own strength. Once again, it's the same person who says, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this, so I'm just going to stop trying to feel this way. But I keep pushing it down, and that feeling becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So another thing they may do is hide. Youth do not always understand how critical adult support is. Some do, but they fear rejection or judgment. Many withdraw, isolate, and hide. Some want to hide physically for fear that people will guess that they are gay. Others hide emotionally so that their secret is not at risk. We saw this with my daughter as she would have multiple social media accounts. She would have social media accounts that she invited just her friends to, and she would post all sorts of things on there. But then there would be ones that we were aware of, that we had access to, and she would post different stuff on there. So she was living very much a double life, and with this group versus that group. It's interesting even for myself, who knows individuals who are struggling, but yet their parents don't even know. So the parents think it's this way. I know it's that way. And the reason why I know this is because my daughter has brought me in. My daughter says, look at this. This is the page of so-and-so. Her parents have no idea this page even exists. And the things they're posting here are completely different than what the parent thinks. There's a hiding. Identify. After some time of denial, repression, hiding, and attempts to, quote, pray the gay away, many teens reach a place of accepting their attractions or internal sense of gender. They begin to internally think in terms of identity rather than inclination. This internal identification can occur while a young person is still repressed and isolated. It should not be a shock that teens consider sexuality and gender to be core elements of personal identity. Everyone tends to experience whom I love and who I am as core elements of our human identity. So the issue here is, and once again, if you're going to argue, which we'll talk about this stuff next week, if you're going to argue it's not your identity, it's not your identity. Well, to somebody who struggles with LGBTism or whatever the word would be, so for somebody who's in the middle of this, it doesn't feel like an inclination. It feels like an identity. This is who I am. And so when you start arguing over identity, it just creates all sorts of problems. But to those who are not struggling with this, we can look at it and say, okay, is it an identity issue or is it an inclination? The more we understand that our identity is you're either in Adam or you're in Christ, that's your identity. And if we are in Christ, we are a new creation. I'm not John Louder, the heterosexual. I don't identify as a heterosexual. I am a heterosexual, but my identity is a child of God. But for those who are in the middle of all this, the world is pushing this on them. What's your identity? What's your identity? And so these kids are trying on identities like crazy. I'm going to give you another sheet here in just a second, but I don't want you to be distracted from what I'm about to say, because once I give you the other sheet, you're going to be like, so anyway. Number 4, shut down. Even teens who identify as LGBT+ may not be outwardly open about their sexuality or gender expression. It is common for teens to say to themselves, I know that I am gay, yet carry on in isolation, repression, and fear. Any teen who lets all of this stress build up for too long without adult support runs the risk of escalating depression and suicidal ideation. Mental, emotional, and spiritual exhaustion can overtake a teenager when anxiety and distress from past pain and future fears accumulate for too long. My goodness, this is definitely happening out there, especially with teens. And you figure teens, like I've said, teens are struggling enough with what typical teens deal with. I mean, man, those years of liking boys or liking girls and all, just the drama. Fitting in middle school, you got acne issues, you've got, your body's changing, your voice is changing. I remember as a boy, your voice is getting lower, and then you crack, and everybody laughing at you, or you're taking your lunch at the lunch line, and then somebody trips you and you spill, and what does everybody do? They're laughing at you now. Just teen years is hard enough as it is, and now put on there where teens are being pushed to ask, are you really even your biological sex? Are you really even that? Because I know with my daughter, every day it was kind of like, okay, what is your identity today? And I'm going to give you the list, and I'm going to show you all the different ones. And it was like every day something was changing. And on the one hand, truth in me wanted to say, you are Mallory, my daughter, who's a child of God. That's what I wanted to say. But grace says, man, I can't even imagine all of the stuff. It's no wonder they want to shut down. How many of you remember thinking to yourself, now, I'm talking to those who are maybe a little bit older. How many of you thought to yourself, I'm not going to go to school today because I need a mental health day? That idea never crossed my mind when I was a kid growing up. Mom, I think I need a mental health day. Oh, son, I'm so happy you told me. I think you should stay home. I think you should take a mental health day and just stay home. My daughter, Mom, Dad, can I have a mental health day today? Grace and truth. Grace says, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. You can take it. Truth says, get out the door, go to school. I know, I'm a horrible parent. I get that. But you can see these young people, the things they're dealing with. Grace and truth, how do we play this stuff out? This is a difficult thing. It really is. But oftentimes they just want to shut down. Finally, number 5, come out. It is critical for teens to be able to share without fear. Some who cannot imagine a path forward attempt to avoid anyone ever knowing by checking out. And that's the expression. Time to check out. Which means to try to take their own life. Others who believe that their life is precious take a risk in sharing their sexuality or gender identity with another person by coming out. Remember, just because a loved one comes out does not necessarily mean that they are currently living it out or even that they intend to live it out. So there's a difference between somebody who comes out and says, I have same-sex attractions, versus somebody who comes out and says, I'm living a gay lifestyle. I'm living a gay identity. I am acting out in these ways. I have a boyfriend and I'm a guy. I have a girlfriend and I'm a girl. I have girlfriends and guy friends, whatever, and I'm a girl or a guy. So just because one comes out doesn't mean they're necessarily living it out, but that's oftentimes they will go together. And then finally, number 6 there is, when teens come out, it is an opportunity to seek recovery from isolation, bullying, or self-hatred. Hurt can turn into anger if people around them do not accept their identity. It is very important for parents and pastors to offer unconditional love and acceptance during this time. Save a life. Be a safe person when a teen comes out. Let me tell you, this was extremely difficult. Because when my daughter, all she wanted to do was fight, I wanted to fight back. And I remember as a kid, when my daughter was little, one of the things that we tried to live by was show grace, bend, but don't break, right? Bend, but don't break. As a parent, I remember hearing, when you're asking what the kid wants for dinner, you don't ask them if they want vegetables. You give them a choice. Which kind of vegetable would you like? Having vegetables was not an option. Which kind of vegetable? I'll give you a choice in this matter. With my daughter, when everything was happening, we were really, really, really struggling because I felt like I was having to forego my own morals, my relationship with God, to allow her to do certain things. And she was picking fights all the time. about everything. And so the more she wanted to fight, though, the more it came down for us to surrender. And we're going to talk about that more next week, because really what I wanted you to see was from the perspective of the person who's coming out. Next week, we're going to talk about really from the perspective of us as parents or loved ones who are not the ones coming out. How do we respond? How do we walk with them? What do we do? And but I wanted you this week to be more a matter of having a better understanding of what young people are going through. And it's not just young people, it may be older people, but those who have these feelings, the things they're facing, just to be able to better understand, to be able to show grace. So I'm going to ask Kathleen again, would you mind coming up and helping pass some of these out here? Jen, would you mind? Yes. Yes. Okay. Wow. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Right. 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 It really is, and thank you for sharing that, Kathy. I know Kathy has quite the experience through her job as she is on a task force, right, or a team of some kind, where she's working with individuals who identify as such to help push policies, procedures. And so to Kathy's point, it was more of a, hey, this is a way for me to better understand what's going on. Not that it's agreement, but it's a better understanding. So how to show grace in those is, yeah. So for those who are watching online, Kathy mentioned that even in Boston, there's, thank you, even in Boston, there's those who are pushing for legislation that would allow young people, as young as 2 or 3, to have a private conversation with their doctor, parents not around, have a private conversation with the doctor to be able to say whether or not they feel like a boy in a girl's body or a girl in a boy's body, or neither. So I want you to look through this. So on this is not the be-all, end-all, but I wanted you to see definitions and words, because in some of these cases, you're going to be like, oh, I know what that word is. But in other cases, maybe you're going to see this, and it's going to be like, I've heard that word, and I had no idea what it was. No idea. Some of the ones that I really want to focus on, and you can read some of these, but I want to focus on some of the ones there in the LGBTQ plus, all that sort of stuff. So I think most people know what a lesbian is. Lesbian is a woman who is attracted exclusively or most significantly to other women, women with women. Gay, interestingly, attracted exclusively or most significantly to the same gender, historically used only for males, but increasingly used also for females. So while lesbianism is women to women, gay has primarily been gay and lesbian, men to men, but it's increasingly being used now for just the idea of being attracted to the same sex. Bisexual, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Transgender describes a person whose internal sense of gender identity does not correspond with their birth sex. So you may hear this, which sex were you declared at birth? It's really interesting even what's going on out there in terms of, which one were you declared? It seems very obvious, but yet even within some of the scientific community, they're coming out and saying just because the doctor said you're a guy because they looked at your genitalia, maybe you're not really, maybe they had it wrong. So which one were you declared at birth to be? Not just which one. Interesting. Yeah. I know some of the sports organizations, the big question right now is, do you allow a man who identifies as a woman to participate in women's sports? And so there's a big thing, and so I'm sure, Dave, you can speak to this. Dave works with athletic administrators around the country. But even within this, there are big pushes within certain states to say, no, it's whatever you were declared to be biologically at birth, that's what they go off of as to whether or not you'll be able to participate in the sport. Basically, not just what you feel. But transgenderism is something that I know probably for most of us here, nowhere would we have thought that our world would be in the position that it is today when it comes to this. It's just completely blows your mind. But it doesn't limit itself to this. Oh, really quick. You'll see down there at the bottom there on that first page, trans with an asterisk is an umbrella term referring to all non-cisgender identities within the gender spectrum. Have you heard that term cisgender before? Okay, if you go to the bottom of the second page there, or the backside, cisgender describes a person whose internal sense of gender identity corresponds with their birth sex. The prefix trans means across, while the prefix cis means on the same side of. So if you're either transgender or you're cisgender. And what's really interesting is when Mallory was going through a lot of what she was doing, she was in a group in which within the group they would come up with all sorts of jokes for those who were cisgender. So they had, I forget what some of the ones was, but it was kind of a term of derision that they would call somebody a cis. You're a cis, versus it was cool to be trans, which is why for my daughter at least, she went through this phase where she's thinking she's a man, because in that culture, in that place, it was way cooler to be trans than it was to be cis. To be cis is boring. And with young people, a lot of young people today, they want to stand out. They want to be unique. They want to be different. And so they want to fit in with this culture. And so to be different and unique is cool versus to be like everybody else is boring. So to be cis is boring. To be trans, well, that's exciting and that's cool. If we go down to Q on the top of that page there, queer or non-straight. It's an umbrella term referring to individuals who are not straight, exclusively attracted to the opposite gender, and or who experience a level of discomfort with their birth gender. Queer is a formerly derogatory term that has been presently reclaimed as an empowering identifier. To be a queer, when I was a kid growing up, if you said somebody was queer, I mean, that was not okay. You did not want to be called queer, but the LGBTQ, IA plus, all these words are coming back, and so it's evidently a term that people want. Questioning. Unsure of the exact nature of one's own gender identity and or sexual identity, and thus unable to confidently identify by a particular sexuality or gender label in the present. She is questioning her sexuality. So it's a lot of young people are in this place. They're questioning because it's perfectly acceptable, especially in schools today, it's perfectly acceptable to be questioning. Perfectly acceptable. I is intersex. Having been born with sex characteristics, example, genitals, gonads, chromosomes, and endocrinology, that do not correspond with the typical notions of male or female bodies. Scientifically, there are people who are born with both male and female genitalia. It's scientifically out there. And oftentimes the question is, which one do you identify? Maybe some of you are more the medical people. How do they determine if it's a boy or a girl? They look at the more prominent features. Okay. Yes.
Allow them to continue, which I think is torture.
Oh.
You've got a vagina and you've got a small penis.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 It truly, the more you look into some of these things, the more hopefully you have compassion. That's why I wanted to go through all this sort of stuff, because it is something very important to have compassion for. Yes, Beth. Absolutely, absolutely. So what Beth was saying, because you can't hear online, what Beth was saying was that when earlier on, because Beth worked in this for a while, earlier on they would just say to this, when somebody was born with what's called ambiguous genitalia, having both, they would say it's easier to raise the child as a girl than a boy. So they would just say, you're going to be raised as a girl. But what happens as the kid grows up and he realizes he's way more boy than girl, even though the genitalia is maybe both, what do you do? And just the difficulty as they have found as the ages have gone on. As I said, there's a lot of compassion that should be out there for individuals who are truly experiencing these sorts of questions. It's not just as simple and cut and dried. You're either gay or you're not. There's many more layers of this. Asexual is an interesting one. Experiencing minimal to no sexual attraction to other individuals. Asexual people can experience a range of romantic inclination from none, aromantic, to some, gray romantic, to full romantic. How many of you feel asexual some days? And maybe other days you feel gray romantic, and other days you may feel romantic. You know, what's difficulty, and this is the struggle, what's difficulty is that youth are being told, you have to identify with what you're feeling. Well, what do you do when your feelings change some days? Like I said, you're feeling one way today and the next day another day, but it's all these labels. I need to come up with the label. I need to have this label or that label or this label or that label. And the pressure these kids are under to have to put a label to their present feelings is intense. And I remember watching with Mallory, it would drive me crazy on the one part, but also I just wanted to put my arms around her and hug her with the other part, because it was every day it seemed like she was trying on a new label. Today I'm asexual because I don't feel this way, or oh no, I'm a lesbian today, or no, I'm definitely a cis today, or I'm all these things back and forth based on what she felt like.
But the LGBTQ community encourages fluidity.
Yes.
I talked to a trans man who said sometimes I go to work as a female, sometimes a man, depends on how I wake up.
Wow.
And
it's normalizing, to say online, it's normalizing this idea of fluidity.
right.
So there's fluidity within these identifications, and based on how I feel determines what I dress or how I act, or Anyway, ally. How many of you have heard the term ally out there? Have you heard this? It's a big term that's out there. A person who is not LGBT+, but who affirms progressive LGBT+ social, political, and or theological causes. In other words, his best friend is an LGBT ally. I may not be gay, I may not be any of the LGBTs, but because I support it, I am an ally of the cause. Pansexual. This is a very interesting one, and now the labels are endless, it seems. Attraction to people not limited by the people's biological sex, gender, or identity. Whereas bisexual tends to denote two gender categories, bi equals two. Someone who is pansexual may not view gender as limited to two categories. Quote, pan means all. She identifies as pansexual. So I, being pan, not me, just example, I, who's pan, may love somebody who's asexual. I may love somebody who is gray romantic. I may love somebody who is bisexual, who's whatever. I don't care. I don't discriminate. I am pansexual. I'm open to all different ones. The genders, that issue that's all out there right now. My daughter showed me a video of a young person who got on, and she was, in all seriousness, she said, I'm identifying as cake gender. I identify as cake gender because this person says, some days I feel very light, I feel sweet, I feel kind of airy, and therefore I'm identifying as cake gender today. And you're going, once you take away some of the moorings, once you take it away, where do you stop? It just keeps going. And so the thing that I wanted you to have this, and you can read through some of these. One thing is, I guess one of the ones, and I'm going to let you go here. One of the ones is same-sex attraction, or SSA. Same-sex attraction or same-gender attraction. This term is common for those who consider attractions toward the same gender to be a sin struggle. Yet, it is offensive to many LGBT+ people because it has behavior, behavior connotations, and diminishes the identity aspects of sexual orientation. Many LGBT people prefer the term same-gender loving. He experiences same-gender attraction. So SSA is same-sex attraction. The idea behind the term same-sex attraction separates this idea of identity from the things that you are attracted to. And so it separates them, those two, but for those within the community, they don't want to just see it as, oh, I'm just attracted. They want oftentimes, and I say it oftentimes, want to see it as, no, this is who I am. I'm not just same-sex attracted, I am a lesbian. I'm not just same-sex attraction, I am gay, I am queer, I am something. So just be aware of that. When you oftentimes may use the term SSA or same-sex attraction, it may not be received in the spirit in which you gave it, because it is considered to be a derogatory or an offensive term within the community, because this is an identity issue now. Okay? Any questions about this? I know I gave you a lot. That's why I wanted you to have some handouts. Any questions or...
One thing that you mentioned was the term non-binary.
Oh,
Which is the same as probably pansexual. They don't claim that there are male and female. It's
yeah,
not.
binary, that there were two binary sexes, male and female. So to be non-binary just says, I'm neither male nor female, I'm something else. It's not necessarily an identification of what you are, but you are something else other than male or female. So that's what non-binary is. So thank you, Beth, for bringing that out.
And for example, I started watching the TV show Quantum Leap. And there was one guy on there, and as an actor, he says he's non-binary, and he was wearing male clothes but wearing makeup. And then as the weeks went on, he started wearing dresses.
Okay.
And whatever, and needless to say, some of the parts of the show I liked, but I'm not watching it.
Yeah, she was commenting about a show called Quantum Leap, in which one of the characters identifies as non-binary. So if you're non-binary, you can dress as a man, dress as a woman, dress with both, dress in a business suit with makeup. You can do whatever you want because you're neither male nor female. And so it can be very confusing that's out there.
And it is, when you think about it, it is true with transgender, because when you decide to transition,
Yeah.
you mentally are saying, like if I decided to transition, I'm mentally saying I'm a male. I still have female anatomy.
Yes.
And there's all different pieces of the transitioning. You can be hormone only, you can be full surgical.
Yeah.
So it is truth when they say, they present themselves as male or female because they have parts of male and female.
Yes.
But, and I'm also reading now, people are detransitioning.
Yes.
So
Go on YouTube, type in detransition or detransitioning. You will see horror stories. Well, they don't show the video of it happening, but a lot of what it is, yes, these individuals are coming on. One of the biggest ones that I watched, and then we will go. One of the biggest ones that I watched was of a person who had detransitioned. But she said the horror that she woke up with, because as she went through the hormone change, she went through what they call top surgery. Top surgery is where you remove just the breast. But then she did full surgery where they removed the bottom and actually formed a penis instead of the vagina. They went through all that stuff. And in the video, she said when she woke up, she expected to have this feeling of relief, like, finally, I am this. And she said she wakes up with this feeling of, I don't feel any different. And just this absolute terror and fury, as she was told, if you just went through this, you will then be able to say, now you're physically in line. And she realized at that moment, she would have to take medication and whatever for the rest of her life to keep whatever she had done, and yet would feel no different. And I watched this video, and it just literally breaks my heart. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about this today was because I want you to have a much more of a compassionate side. That rather than coming into this with guns a-blazing, because we can, I mean, we can go and quote the verses and whatever else. I can give it to you straight. But that's not what they're feeling. And so if you can understand that, yes, there is a place for truth, and yes, there is a place for grace. It's grace. It's not either or, it's both and. And if we need the Holy Spirit to be able to say, how do I navigate and come into this and say, okay, this is where I can offer you truth, and this is where I have to step back and simply offer grace. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week, okay? So, we're going to solve the world's problems next week, okay? You got to be here, all right? Thanks, everybody, for coming out. I really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon. Yeah, thanks for coming out. Nice job.